And we're back. I just want to point out that this seagull is wielding a cutlass.
It's true, and there's a pirate ship.
Yeah.
Oh, and a like a what are these called? Whirlpools?
Yeah, I'm guessing that this movie was made after the Pirates of the Caribbean involved pirate ships getting sucked into a vortex like that.
That reminds me of a weird anecdote. When we first went to Salt Lake City for the American Atheist Convention, I heard seagulls, and I hear seagulls in Olympia too, even though we're not necessarily that close to the sea. But and I was like, weird, because we're like landlocked here. And then when we went to the temple, to the Mormon temple, there's a statue with seagulls, like in the center of the temple, of the courtyard. And it turned out to be some kind of religious experience, because that's how they founded the city of Salt Lake City as the capital of Mormonism. Because seagulls led them.
Seagulls were pooping on them?
They heard
Proof that
seagulls.
Mormon is the true religion.
They heard the seagulls, so they knew there must be water nearby, and because they were in the Utah kind of deserty, and they're like, oh, this must be the place.
So,
God showed it
They
to
get
us.
there and it's just salty as
That's true. It is
So
a salty
I'm
lake.
talking with PTOWN, who doesn't want his features represented because he has 11 ears that run the entire course of the top of his head, and they all blink different colors in the middle of the night. And he doesn't want to be recognized for that feature.
Aren't joking, but I know, like,
He's
I
got
don't.
12 ears.
I tried to get my wife to come meet all the Satanists here in
Yeah.
Olympia, but wasn't convinced.
Just tell her the orgies are amazing. She's sitting home.
She's like, I like you said. No, she's not a doctor, right?
She's an attorney.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
She's oh, that's right. Am I doxing myself?
She's a lawyer. Ixnay. So we had to refill on the alcohol, and I can tell already that I'm going to need a stronger dose. We're talking with PTOWN about why he believes what he believes. All right, and I'm in the teacup ride after way too many already. Let's go.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so we were talking about, I was trying to point out the different modes to how we can approach what's true and what isn't. And I'm using the solar eclipse example, and I was talking about the Drake equation. From my perspective, as an atheist, back in the day, we invest all this money in order to try and find other life out there in the universe. And if you look up, someone needs to do it for me, an atheist in the chat or something, but if you look at the Drake equation, it's going to outline the probability, hypothetical probability of there being life somewhere else, right? And the different facets that would include. But where do you put something like the solar eclipse into that equation? I get that it's irrelevant.
It's
but it still
not,
exists.
in a
If
way.
it's irrelevant, why are we
It's
talking
not
about it?
completely.
But if you're the Drake equation, is there's so many worlds out there. There's billions of stars
Should I hold the
and
camera, lady?
billions of galaxies. So therefore, the probability is that there is life on other planets. It's the same argument with there is a moon that looks like it's the same size in the sky during eclipse. There are billions and trillions of planets, right? With billions of trillions of moons. What is the probability that some of those moons will be the size of their sun during an eclipse?
And that's where I wanted
Or that
to...
they just have one moon.
It's where I wanted to get to it in the beginning. Let's imagine, or hopefully later, if there's a cloud, or take a look at the moon next time you do it at night and see how small it is relative to the rest of the sky. So what I'm trying to say is, in order for you to see the significance of this, I think you'd have to imagine a world where there's something different than what we experience now. I think that this 1-to-1 ratio that you use when it comes to logic is not sufficient, not truly addressing the evidence that's right in front of our eyes of a designer.
Okay, so
Don't
the evidence that you've described so far.
Because you have to consider the possibility of something else.
You've given a number of arguments that imply evidence against a designer, and you've just assumed that it's evidence for. Erroneously, confusingly, but you've taken all of these facts that that oppose, contradict your belief in a designer, and you've declared them for evidence for the designer.
I'm not following you.
I know. I've sat through this. This is why I said I need more alcohol. I've listened to your argument where you argue against theism without realizing that you're arguing against theism, and say, therefore, you conclude that there must be a God.
You know, on your argument with the moon and solar eclipses. So, if what you're saying is proof for design, then that sounds to me like God said, you know what? I'm going to make the moon the size that it looks like the sun during an eclipse. Now, what would be a God's motive for making it appear that way? Doesn't it make more sense that because the moon is a moon orbiting our planet, and we're orbiting the sun, and just like trillions of other alien worlds that are not ours, that isn't it a better explanation that it's a coincidence at this moment in time? That's what it does.
We have other worlds to compare it to, and there are other moons in our solar system, and you don't experience anything like this anywhere else, even if you were able.
How do you know that?
Because we can
And what
run the
does it matter?
calculations. My point is your argument for there being a 1-to-1 ratio and it's zero evidence. Your
argument is God did that.
Is that there's nothing to compare it to.
All right, let's look at
But we do have
let's
things-
be really clear. You've given arguments that, whether you understand it or not, are arguments against a designer, which you've then declared to be evidence for a designer.
So what arguments did I make against a designer? So
For one, you made the erroneous argument that the mathematical certainty, the mathematical inevitability that the one moon that we have would cross in the face of the one sun that we have from our perspective. You said the probability of that being coincidental, which, by the way, is 1. It's certain. It's absolute. Has to be coincidental. There's no chance of it not being coincidental. You said that the probability of that paled compared to it being the impossible assertion that it was done by design, that it was done deliberately by a magic imaginary genie who orchestrated all of this, which can't be possible in any way at all. You've given no indication that this is even possible, much less probable.
The probability,
Well,
you said that it's not happening anywhere else. The probability in billions of stars in just our own galaxy
I understand.
and billions of galaxies, the probability that exists on another solar system is probably pretty good.
Should I just hold the camera and let you two talk?
If you give enough time.
That way we won't have the disparity.
Give it
in
enough
volume.
time.
If
There
you
you
give
go.
enough time and you give it enough endlessness, then yes, you could imagine that there's one just like.
Or you don't have to imagine.
This is the type of sound
You can
bites I
predict.
hear.
It's inevitable.
I don't see how you don't see the contradictions in what you're saying, though, Art.
I don't, because they're not there.
Okay.
So you're
And
arguing.
I'll
You're
explain.
arguing that, given for our perspective going around the sun and our perspective with the moon going around us, you're saying that the probability of the inevitability of the moon crossing in front of the sun is improbable compared to the impossibility of a magic imaginary genie orchestrating this instead. Give me fact number 1 that this magic imaginary genie is even possible. Go. Evidence 1, your first and only evidence ever. Give it to me now.
Do you remember when I told you the atheist playbook? It's always you want the one. And then
Okay.
and again, if you
Give
do
me
under the-
5 if you think that would be easier.
But they have to
Give me
be
anything.
summative, not
having
cumulative.
what I'm saying is having the foundation of. I'm not saying that this is proof, but
No, give me
but-
give me a fact. You can give me 5 facts if you think I'm being unfair by asking for 1. You can give me 25 facts if you think that would be more fair. But I'm asking
I'll
for
give you
any
a list.
single
I'll give you
fact.
a list of
Give me any list of any number of things, but give me a fact.
I want to point
that
out something.
hold on a second.
Okay.
Evidence is a fact that indicates, right? So we have the inevitable certainty that the moon will eventually cross in front of the sun. 1 to 1.
It's the size of them that's significant.
Okay, so one is 400 times further away than the other one, and is and 400 times bigger. So coincidentally, you're saying that what's the impossible coincidence is?
What I'm saying is,
And that somehow implies magic imaginary genie that can't exist?
If you talk to Christians, they'll go, well, duh, God made that. You talk to atheists, and they're like, this is zero evidence, absolutely none.
Then give me
I'm
evidence.
trying to say there's an in-between here.
Okay,
If-
show
for
me
you-
the in-between.
The in-between is for you to consider the possibility.
There's no
that
possibility
this
until you
is-
show me one.
This, if you have, how many solar eclipses would it take before you would say, oh, maybe God did this, Aaron? How many?
Why would God do
11
it?
gazillion times 50 gazillion.
So
Why
So
would God
there is
You
no,
see my point.
there's never a point. There is never a point where the giant orange duck from Khartoum created the universe.
Why would God do it? Why would God? Oh, let me make this eclipse where the moon covers the sun. What to show people? Why would a God do that? Why would the supreme creator of the universe do that on one planet in an obscure part of an obscure galaxy in an obscure part of the universe?
Hey, I need a
do that?
cameraman who's like not so much behind the camera as in front of it. Either
Okay.
record or be the show.
No,
One or the
no,
other.
you told me to bring this up.
Yeah,
Okay.
I understand your argument, and I used to
You're-
have that, but I'm under the position that we are the only life in this universe, and I have a different
How do you
position.
know
ridiculous.
that? How do you know
I'm just
that?
saying.
that very notion.
How do you know it?
I'm just saying that's the impression I get from
How-
reading scripture.
So
How
God
do
is
you know it?
enormously wasteful. So God created 11
well, you
jillion
have to
galaxies.
understand too that there-
Each galaxy, out of 11 jillion of them, each galaxy contains hundreds of billions of stellar systems, and out of all of them, there's just this one rock that has one moon as opposed to 2 moons or 3 moons or 5 moons, because
Or 2
that
suns.
means something.
Most solar systems have 2 suns.
So there's this one rock that has life only on a fraction of its surface, with all of the rest of this being absolutely
Barren.
wasted space. And you know what they call that? The anthropic principle. You know what they call that? Fine tuning. You're arguing against yourself. Give me a fact that shows that your God is possible, not probable, not certain. Show me that it's possible.
No,
Okay,
no,
and
no, wait.
let me-
Uh,
go ahead.
okay, and then you can answer because Arn asked me to say this. Okay, a fact, right? He wants a fact.
Sure.
If you were on trial for murder, they want the proof beyond reasonable doubt.
Sure. And I'll give it to
And
you right now.
we need this fact beyond reasonable doubt, not just a bunch of circumstantial things that the murderer was at the scene, that the murderer had the same pair of shoes. You can't get convicted by that.
The glove
What-
fits.
I will.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to answer it because now, pertaining to your point, okay? The Bible declared, and God.
The Bible declared.
God uses the universe, the stars, as an example of His glory, and so
The stars
you're-
being things that the Bible describes as being smaller than the sun, even though many of them are larger than the sun, which proves that the Bible is written by people who didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. But go ahead with your argument.
I like to contend that the Bible declares science before we discovered it. Before.
Okay, so by contradicting science in all principles and practice, thou shalt not put the God, your Lord, the God, to the test. So by contradicting and by the Bible telling you to believe what you're told simply because you're told to and never to test it, that means the opposite of what it says, that the Bible condones science where there's no arguments from authority, where all the Bible argues for is arguments from authority. Okay, yeah, so by saying the opposite of science is science, gotta go ahead.
Okay. The Bible talks about stars, and it
Being
cases-
smaller than the sun, which is wrong, but we can't admit that the Bible's ever wrong, even though it always is.
I'm going to have a different position. I believe that the Bible talks about how the stars are innumerable, how God expands this out, but also how each star is different in glory, and that's significant when you look at it from a scientific historical context. It's not until relatively recently, and we've talked about this, did we discover how true that really is. So even though your idea is that God's selfish for making everything, so many universes,
I didn't
or
say
so many
selfish.
so many galaxies.
I didn't say selfish.
Whatever it is,
Grotesquely inefficient.
whatever you're blaspheming. What I'm saying is it's evidence that the Bible is true because it has
St. Peter, you listening? I'm blaspheming
It
here.
has predictive power, baby. The Bible demonstrates itself to be
What
the
does
Word
it
of God.
predict?
So when
In
the
so many
Bible
ways,
says
it
that the
predicted
stars
that the
are
stars
smaller
are-
than the sun, and it's wrong about that, you're admitting that the Bible's never wrong about the things that it's wrong about because it has predictive ability, baby. So when it says that rabbits chew cud and they don't chew cud, when the Bible says that the earth is flat
they eat
and
their
it's
own
in four
food, it's
quadrants
kinda close.
and that it's covered by a giant crystal dome with windows in it, when the Bible's wrong about fucking everything, then that's predictability, baby. Really? Hey, can you name something the Bible ever got right?
I just did. I just talked
You just
about
named
that.
a whole bunch of shit the Bible was wrong about, and then declared that it was predictable. Yeah, you're right. It predicted a bunch of shit that turned out not to be true, that ended up contradicting the facts, that ended up proving the Bible wrong. Wrong. The Bible's wrong. Get that through your head. I don't know what it takes. So, what is the fact, the actual fact, the thing that's true that shows that your God is possible?
Just as we're trying to decipher.
Am I a dick yet, or do I need more alcohol?
You need some more, and you got all that you can drink with me, buddy. Okay. Look, I believe, and I think that there is evidence for it. You said in your video this morning you want evidence, and I'm saying this is what the Bible says.
Did you see that video that I did this
I
morning?
did, and I was on my way here, dropping my little one off, and I watched it 4 times.
Wow. I'm impressed. And
Of course.
sorry, but this guy drives while watching video.
But look, I think that there are instances in the Bible, and there's a lot of them, but you might deny that they're there. But if you objectively look at Scripture and you pattern it with modern science, you'll see that the Bible does have predictive power.
And that it has been proven wrong over and over and over again, like consistently.
What did it
Right.
predict?
It's never gotten anything right, but it's gotten a shit ton of stuff wrong.
What did it predict? You said it predicted that the stars were innumerable. Is
God
that
used it
your
as-
prediction there?
Yeah, because if you have, back in the day, you have a lot of scientists that used to write back and forth to each other, arguing about how many stars in the sky, 1,200,
And sometimes
1,214, this and that.
they're counting galaxies as stars.
They didn't know that at the time.
Right, so that's a fair assessment, even at the time, rather than being a prediction. Even at the time, they don't have a means of counting that high. So it's not really much of a prediction,
Well,
is
see,
it?
so if your argument is that those people of that time couldn't count the 1,200 and some change, then I don't think that's a very good argument.
1,200? Are you suggesting that the stars account, or that the galaxies, even if we counted every...
I'm using the numbers that the people of the time would argue about.
So you said it's 1,200. That if I think that
from
people
each
could only...
hemisphere.
That if I think
That was
people
your
could only-
argument.
you're saying that my argument, which it isn't, but you're saying that my argument is that if people could only count up to 1,200...
Well, you're saying that they weren't able to count that high, but I'm saying that they are countable if you're just counting the ones from without using telescopes, just using your eye. They are
Right, so
countable.
they don't have
The Bible
a way...
declares they're uncountable.
So they didn't have a way then of counting them. We still today, without supermassive telescopes, still don't have a means of counting all the individual stars. We can maybe
Which is what the
count,
Bible declared. But
which
they had
was
a means-
already known at the time, so
No,
it's
because
not a
there's only-
prediction.
No, because at the
You
time,
don't understand what a prediction is?
I don't think you understand my
It's
point.
when you say something's going to turn out to be true that is not already known to be true.
At the time, they could count them. They had the
At the
uncountable.
time, they knew how many stellar systems were in the Andromeda Galaxy. At the time, they knew how many stars there were in the Hubble Deep Field photograph.
They didn't.
That's
they weren't
amazing.
Aware, they weren't aware
Where
of
can we
those-
see the
They weren't
documentation
aware
of
of
that?
other galaxies at the time. That's my point.
That's my point.
So why didn't it
Is
predict that?
am I not making sense?
Why
No,
did-
you're
why-
making my sense.
why
You're
didn't-
arguing my
why
side
didn't
for
the
me.
Bible
arguing
predict
my side for me,
galaxies?
Aaron.
Okay,
Why didn't
all
the
the
Bible
argument.
predict
What you're telling me is that the evidence
is-
against God, all the evidence against God is evidence for God. That's what you're telling me.
I'm saying if you look at it from a scientific historical context,
Then you
the
come up with
Bible
no God.
The Bible declares that that the stars are innumerable.
And
which
smaller
means they
than the
can't-
sun.
Which means they can't be counted.
And that they're smaller than the sun.
And they
all
all
of them.
differ in glory, which is
Oh, and they're all in the hemisphere of the firmament, which, by the way, doesn't exist, because that's yet another gazillion things that the Bible got wrong. Because the Bible gets everything wrong, but it's predictability, baby.
you like my baby, huh?
Yeah, that was just condescending as fuck.
I mean, I don't know how.
But
many
full
different ways
cred,
to
he's buying my drinks. But we are going to have to move to liquor from this. And if that's not amazing enough, that seagull is wielding a cutlass.
Yeah, that's proof of something. God must have put it there to talk to us
And they
about it.
predicted that whirlpool before
Yeah.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Whatever sequel that was.
Must have been on The Simpsons, because that's how God talks to us too.
I am going to need some stronger drink.
But you wouldn't accept that the seagull was any kind of sign for the Mormons of God. But then why should we accept that the eclipse is some kind of sign of God?
Well, I was trying to point out that there is evidence out there where people would have a disagreement whether or not it is actually evidence. And
Do we
and
need Fox
acknowledging-
Mulder to figure out what that evidence is that's out there?
The truth is out there.
And I was trying, and I use this example because if I bring it up to Christians, they're like, well, "What's the point? That's not proof of anything." Yes, obviously God made that. Talk to atheists, and that's not proof of anything. That's just a 1-to-1 ratio because we haven't experienced anything else. It takes the imagination of being able to experience a different world.
What if we don't want to use imagination? What if we don't
You use
want
it
to
all the
believe?
time. You believe in evolution.
Oh.
I'm just dropping. I'm just pushing buttons. Pushing buttons.
Buying my drinks or not, you were about to have a
I
moment.
was just pushing buttons. I'm just pushing buttons.
And he's bigger than me, and it didn't matter.
I didn't mean that. Go ahead.
Okay. I don't understand how when the Bible gets, and we're going to have this is going to be an upcoming discussion because we agreed on having a number of discussions, and one of them was how did we phrase this? How the Bible gets fucking everything wrong about the earth in relation to the rest of the cosmos. Everything, what did it, was it biblical cosmology?
Yeah.
I think is the way that somebody had described it.
This would be part of my discussion with you, is that the Bible foretells stars before we discover the details of stars.
The Bible that was written centuries after he thinks it was written, it was well after other people had better understanding of cosmology than the Bible authors did.
Maybe.
The stars were not discovered until 450 BC.
Maybe this. The Hindus say that
I've heard about this.
that yes,
Yeah.
their sacred text predicts that the universe is billions of years old. Are you impressed by that?
Oh, you're
No.
gonna be more impressed when you hear what the specific number is.
I've heard this, yeah. I'm not.
The Day of Brahma.
You're not impressed by it?
Are you
No, I
impressed?
don't- I don't
Have you
wanna-
heard of the Day
Hinduism?
of Brahma?
I don't want to get into but I do have an objection to that, but I don't want to bring that up. It's not-
Have you heard about the Day of Brahma?
Possibly, but I don't know I don't specifically know.
In the
date.
Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna describes a cyclic history in terms of the Day of Brahma, which lasts 432 billion some odd year, 320 million years. I may not be remembering
Deep
it,
time.
but it's really close to the age that scientists have put for the Earth on radiometric dating. It's just
4.2, I believe.
it's stunning. 400. That's what it was. 420
Yeah. Are you
million,
impressed by that?
380 billion, and this is in the Bhagavad Gita. This is 600 years.
I'd rather not overcome that objection because we're going to go way off on a tangent.
It's
But
not
I
a
do have-
tangent.
How is that not impressive?
I would say it is impressive that it matches secular science. I'm saying, but also just
Many
so you
centuries
know,
before
More
the
impressive
Bible.
than a solar
look, fine.
eclipse.
I'll just answer it.
Okay.
I think that there's more to the battle that we face as Christians. That there's an aspect of spirituality. I'm sorry, but there is. There's more to it. If you if you can't actually acknowledge that there is some evidence to a solar eclipse pointing towards a design right, zero, zip, that's your stance.
I do
there's
admit
definitely
that.
a
I do admit
there's
that there
definitely
is zero evidence from the solar eclipse or from every other
Or
source.
the Bhagavad Gita.
There's
We're not impressed
no
by that
indication
either.
that
Really?
your God is even possible,
Well, then
much
I-
less probable.
then I gotta tell you
I
we're not.
fully agree. There's no evidence that it's even possible at all.
I see the thing with
Then
in
I
the
think
Bhagavad
it's
Gita.
I think there might be a spiritual aspect to this. or
Maybe
Mr.
you need to
Mr.
come up with something that's not maybe spiritual, meaning imaginary.
No.
Maybe you need to come up with something that's like real.
I'm not sure which text it came from, but we're not convinced of Hinduism because of this coincidence in numbers. So why would we? And you're not impressed either. So
Well-
why would we be impressed by a solar eclipse?
You know, just to make it clear, you guys are going to be changing your numbers all the time, just like you always have. So
no,
Wait,
we
what?
haven't changed any numbers.
it's always going to be 4.2 or whatever it is. 4.2
Okay,
million.
we'll
So
change it when we get
refining,
better evidence.
refining specifics when they come up with when they started coming up with radiometric dating, they had to refine, and they get a little closer and closer. So we're just like tuning in the focus,
I
right?
understand, but
So we
if
get
you-
higher and higher resolution. So it may only be 480 at this point, but now it's 720, and then it becomes, what is it, 1080p? So are you complaining that the improved function or the improved focus is a
The
change?
ability to change your mind and say I don't know
I
is
think
a
it's a
strength.
great. I think it's a great thing for someone to have the ability to change their mind. And be
Awesome.
open to-
So going from 480 to 720 to 1080p, is that a contradiction or is that a more precise?
We're getting more
Look,
precise.
if you're going to hold the position that you guys are always going to believe that the Earth is 4.2 or whatever,
We're
What if,
not.
we, what if we're
precise
not
number
always
is
going to
now.
believe? What if we're not always going to believe?
What if we can change our mind with
what if we're not going to believe anything, but we're going to consider whatever evidence
Yeah.
might be testable?
New evidence comes
Yeah,
along.
if extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but you bring me extraordinary evidence that contradicts everything that, you know what, I'm going to consider it.
Yeah.
If you bring me a fact, an actual fact that contradicts what I hold, I don't have a choice.
Even if it's
I'm
accepted
going to
science.
have to consider it. If you can show me that it really is a fact.
We're going down to the you want the one when my argument is it's the cumulative evidence.
Bring me 50.
I think that God is guilty of committing and creating this world. He is guilty, and there's two.
I
different-
think
But
that
you
God
have no
in the
reasonable evidence beyond a
storybooks,
reasonable doubt.
in the
Sorry,
storybooks, God is guilty of all kinds of immoral atrocities, but he's not guilty of anything in reality.
But you have no evidence beyond a reasonable doubt.
You don't
to
have any
believe
evidence.
that.
Let's just don't have any
I
evidence.
do. If we
Stop.
want- If we talk about, I mean, maybe it
Fact
found-
that indicates. Here one.
I think maybe it would be more interesting if we talk about the different aspects of design that.
Okay, so
Instead
when
of
I
talking
asked for
about
a fact,
Oh.
any fact, I got 0.
We gave
So
you-
how much evidence do we have so far? What's our list up to?
We gave you like a point from Hindu beliefs
I
that somehow match something, and you weren't impressed by that either, because you
Well,
know
so
a
I do-
coincidence when you hear that.
I was trying to make
Or-
the connection that I do think that there's a spiritual adversary, and to think that they would
That
use
came
some
from the
other
devil?
religion to. It doesn't surprise me, and I don't like to go in that area because it's gonna, the chat's gonna go crazy.
Are you saying
But
the
I'm saying
Hindus
is-
were inspired by the devil?
I'm saying that there's bigger. Once you become a Christian, you start to become aware of.
Unaware. You start
start
to
to-
reject reality.
You
and
start to consider that there is other forces out there besides.
start to pretend,
the scope of our
imagine
knowledge.
that there are
Oh, okay.
other forces.
So,
So
like,
that would be my. That
other
would be
gods
my.
or is
my
it
All right, so
That would-
we
that would
brought
be
up
my
earlier.
explanation.
We brought up earlier on the issue of evidence. We brought up the fact that we're arguing evolution versus creation, and we brought up the fact that evolution happens, that we can measure it and trace it and everything, observe it directly, and creationism, rabbit out of a hat. Oh,
Solar
it's just a
eclipse.
trick. Just a trick. So the rabbit out of a hat doesn't even count as evidence. But we got evolution. That's real. So. Well, that's just microevolution. Okay, fine. We got microevolution, but we don't have micro creation. We got zip creation. We got nothing whatsoever for creation. Then we have the emergence of new species, documented by creationists, even admitted by creationists. So now we have macroevolution also. So we got micro and macroevolution, both admitted by creationists. And on the evolution or on the creationist side, we have I like to believe in magic. And then that's it. And we're still at 0.
Hey.
And then we have we have that humans are biologically apes, both morphologically and genetically. So that's yet two more distinctly different facts, which are actually bodies of facts individually. But we have more and more evidence building up for the evolution thing, and we have for creationism. I like to believe in magic, and so we're still at zero.
I don't know if they can hear it on the video, but we hear seagulls here.
You hear 'em?
It does seem like a laugh track.
Yeah. So, evidence of Mormonism?
I don't even know where to go with that.
No.
Have you not been watching the Reading Joseph Smith thing?
Look at the connection. There's a
connection.
seagull here, and we hear him. This must be God.
That's what you sound like to us.
I understand.
You sound like that to us.
But the Bible talks about how we're going to sound like foolishness. I mean, and so I'm out here doing it.
The Bible predicted that.
Well,
it's not like the people who wrote the Bible didn't already know that, hey, you know what? Everybody that advocates what we believe already sound like they're batshit crazy. So let's just predict that they're going to sound like that in the future too.
Well, in essence, it does. It describes exactly you, Lauren. The Bible does, and it warns about it. And
What's
I'll tell
the
you this.
The Bible warns
that
there will be scoffers. There are going to be people who say pictures or it didn't happen.
Okay, well let me just draw an analogy.
Hold on a second. We're gonna have to cut. I need another drink. It's got to be a stronger drink.
Let me
than
finish
this.
my analogy. And then
Okay,
we'll get
good.
Okay. All right. Imagine that
Don't
you're.
focus the camera on him.
I'm not.
We don't need to see his oscillating radiance of different
Sometimes I'm
multicolors.
tempted to go back there and I'm like, oh, no, don't do that.
I'm glad you're resisting that urge.
Yeah.
Imagine
We don't
that,
need to see that he has 15 breasts on his face.
That would be a great
An
skill.
enviable situation, I admit.
A seagull just flew overhead.
Imagine that you're like, I don't know, in an army, and you're serving a king, and this king says the enemy's going to come from over this hill, is going to come at this time, is going to come with this weapon, and then sure enough, the enemy at that time with that weapon comes over that hill. Are you going to serve that king? Are you going to feel more confident?
I would be impressed, since that's nothing like what the Bible does.
It does.
Since that's the directly opposite of what the Bible does. Look at Isaiah. Look at Isaiah 7, for example. When Isaiah says, he comforts his king, saying that your Palestinian and what was it? It was the two kings. Your two enemies are not going to be a threat to you. Let me assure you that there is a child who already exists and is not Jesus. There is a maiden, not virgin, but there is a maiden who is already pregnant and definitely had sex before she got pregnant, who is going to have a child. And by the time that child can make the choice between honey and curds, which means within 3 years, you will see that your two opposing kings, I forget the nationalities, will be no threat to you. That was the prediction. That was mistranslated by the Bible to get everything wrong. It was mistranslated in the Bible as saying that it was a prediction about Jesus. And in fact, what happened was that when the maiden turned out not to be pregnant, when Isaiah thought she was pregnant, he went and impregnated her himself. And then when the child was born, he forgot to name the child Emmanuel, which, by the way, what was Jesus' name? Oh, it wasn't Emmanuel. Go figure. But also Isaiah forgot to name the child Malel, Halal, Hashbaz, whatever the fuck ridiculous name. He forgot. He gave it the wrong name. So then on top of all of that, as if he hadn't already fucked up the prophecy 3 times already, before that child was able to choose honey over curds, the two kings aligned, ran in, and killed everybody. So the prophecy ended up failing every way that it possibly could fail, and everybody died. And this abject failure on all levels is what Christians claim as proof of God. Over to you.
I'll have to brush up on that Isaiah story. But I think that the Bible's clear that
the fact that Matthew got it so wrong is the problem I have.
On Isaiah?
Yeah. The fact that all of this was known before Matthew fucked up every detail about that story.
I'll have to brush up on it. But what I was referring to is, the Bible talks about how there will be scoffers, and then they're going to deny the flood. You're going to worship
Because we have proof
creeping
against
things and two-footed and four-footed beasts.
Yeah, and we're
Okay.
disproving the flood every
You're
day.
going,
again.
it says to stay away from endless genealogies. The genealogies in the Bible are exhaustive, but they're not.
Stay away
endless.
from all those facts.
What is endless genealogies and four-footed beasts and creeping things?
I get you. Let's not look at details.
What's wrong
And
The
with
says-
devil
four-footed
is
beasts?
in the
And it
details.
says,
What's wrong with four-footed beasts?
science falsely so-called.
Science, knowledge.
Does it
which is
say
the
science?
translation is knowledge,
Knowledge.
Well,
falsely so-called, which is not so much my problem as the knowledge. falsely
Knowledge.
so-called of the religious.
The only way that you could say that the Bible isn't scientific is by changing
Is by
the
every way.
definition. Is by changing the definition to something along the lines of methodological naturalism. And
Okay.
only by definition do you make it.
Only by definition am I definitively correct.
What's the definition
Only by
we're
being
using?
completely accurate am I completely
What
correct.
definition is he using?
I'm saying by changing the methodologies
Oh, I got
in
you.
science.
So-
Okay, by
by
redefining.
definition,
When religion claims to know things that they merely believe, oh, I know for a fact there's a God, except that it's not a fact and you don't know it and there's no God. So just by being abjectly wrong on every point, the creationism can claim that they have evidence that they're true. By being wrong about everything. Because 1,500 wrongs make a right, apparently.
let's go get some drinks.
Yeah.
Yes, Steve.